له يا سيد أنا رجعت على لبنان، أتمنى أنك ترجع كمان على لبنان.
قرار صادر من مجلس الجامعة تسمية حزب الله الإرهابي.
Good afternoon. You're watching the English newscast on Future Television. I'm Yumna Naufal, and these are today's top stories. Protests erupt in Beirut as the Lebanese government approves a plan to solve an 8-month waste crisis that has raised concerns for public health. MP Talal Arslan states that the landfill plan to solve the waste management crisis will explode in the face of government, stressing that the opening of the Costa Brava landfill is not a solution. And Syria's warring sides prepare for a new round of peace talks after locking horns over the fate of President Bashar al-Assad, with the regime insisting his ouster is a red line. The Lebanese government has approved a plan to solve an 8-month garbage crisis that has fueled protests against the dysfunctional state and raised concerns for public health. 2 landfills will be established near Beirut, and a third one south of the city will be reopened for 2 months to receive the waste that has piled up since July. This is according to Information Minister Ramzi Jrej after a cabinet meeting. The Lebanese waste crisis began when the landfill south of Beirut was closed with no plan in place for an alternative. The government has been working on a plan to export the waste, but this was scrapped last month because the firm chosen failed to obtain documents showing that Russia, the intended destination, had agreed to accept it. Hundreds of protesters marched throughout Beirut yesterday to the government's headquarters to say that the government plan is unsustainable. MP Talal Arslan states that the landfill plan to solve the month-long trash management crisis will explode in the face of government, stressing that opening the Costa Brava landfill does not mean that it will be used randomly or is a feasible solution. The state cannot act randomly in using the Costa Brava landfill, Arslan said, because we will be watching each stone that will be thrown there. Arslan's comments come following the lengthy cabinet session on Saturday that approved to establish 2 extra landfills, including the Costa Brava, and reactivate Namis temporarily as part of a 4-year plan to resolve the country's 8-month problem. The MP has long protested against opening a landfill in Costa Brava, stressing that the government is a failure by all political means, and it has given the citizens a choice between opening landfills or leaving the waste on the streets, pointing out that the landfills are located in remote areas. Joining us now on the line is one of the co-founders of the You Staying movement, Mr. Asad Tebyan. Asad, thank you for being with us. Can you hear me?
Yes, I do. Thank you for hosting us.
Asad, after yesterday's government decision, what has been the movement's reaction?
Well, until now, we're still studying what the government has proposed to the Lebanese public. This is the first attempt that they've been trying to find a solution for the garbage crisis. Until now, the government is giving the Lebanese citizens a choice of being slowly killed by the garbage emissions to the air and the pollution that it causes, or between being slowly killed by waste, dumping this garbage into landfills that are not health controlled either environmentally or on or health basis. So basically, they're not thinking of a way to solve the problem as much as if they're thinking of a way in order to make money out of the problem. Today we read in An-Nahar newspaper that sources within the ministry said that the 7 hours lasting meeting between the cabinet yesterday was actually a meeting that was based on the political blocs asking for what benefits are they going to get of the solution.
Right. This is true. This came out in An-Nahar today that they were basically there for 8 hours trying to outbid who was going to get the best bargain out of this crisis, and after which Mr. Prime Minister Tamam Salam said he would resign if this ever got out.
Well, now, I think that Prime Minister Tamam Salam lacks courage. He's been saying that he wants to resign every now and then. Either do it or stop using this paper. Like, for God's sakes, you're a Prime Minister. You're not a kid who's playing with his toys and saying, I don't want them anymore. You're in a public office. Either serve as a person who is deserving to be in the public office, or just resign and let other people fill your shoes and make it better in the country for all of us.
You know, I want to talk a little bit about this for just 1 minute before I get back to the waste crisis. You know, this waste crisis has been an accumulation of so many problems that also include a lack of municipal elections, a lack of parliamentary elections, where this government has failed. The government has failed, right, almost 2 years now to elect a president. So when you were part of the protest yesterday and they were all chanting against the government that has failed them so many times, what was the constant voice that you were hearing? What was the message?
I think the constant voice between all the crowds that went into the square yesterday and everyone that is staying at their houses, that the system is not functioning right. There should be a solution where we have people in the government and people in the parliament who put people's rights in front and not think of what they're going to get out of every crisis that happens. I think they're deliberately creating these crises among each other so they can actually steal more money from the public. Ironically, last month or 2 months ago, all the political blocs went to the cabinet,
right,
although they haven't been meeting for months, and the only decision they came up with is to increase the national debt by $4.5 billion that was divided in loans and grants,
right,
so that they can use them in, I would say, stealing more money.
So, you know, we talk about all these problems. What is next? Do you think, you know, people have been criticizing movements, they've been criticizing the protests, but do you think this is a time where we should quit, or they should keep going with the protest, with demanding that the rights be happening, that solutions become sustainable? A lot of these
I don't think people are criticizing the demands, because these demands are for everyone. I think the politicians are trying to stir the general public against these demands and against what people actually should be calling for, and that's because it will serve their own agenda. Yesterday in Houston we gave a warning with thousands of people marching the streets, and tomorrow I think everyone is invited for an escalation where the main roads will be blocked to Beirut entrance. Other cities, we call for the people to take things into their own hands and block the roads as well for a few hours, giving another warning for the government that things can't work this way.
Okay.
Either you actually listen to the people, or we're gonna reach a higher demand.
So let's finish on this one. When you say the government should listen to the people, what are you demanding in terms of civil society today? What is civil society demanding?
We're not civil society, we're people. We don't love labels, we don't love movement names, we don't love anything. We're citizens calling for their rights. That's one. Number two, what we're calling for is an environmentally and healthy solution for the garbage crisis. This starts by sorting. This goes with the processing of the garbage and your recycling. If you put these three pillars into your long-term solution and don't think of incinerators 4 years after, or landfills that are not going to be healthy for the environment, then maybe we can find a solution.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us. That was one of the co-founders of the Houston movement, Mr. Asad Zebyan, with us on the line.
Have a good day.
Thank you. Foreign Minister Jibran Bassil is stressing that declaring Hezbollah a terrorist group at the Arab League is unacceptable, pointing out that Lebanon has already expressed reservation on that labeling. In an interview to the Kuwait Al-Ra'i Daily, Bassil said describing the party as terrorist does not comply with the Arab Treaty to combat terrorism. Hezbollah has been ranked in the United Nations, and it has a broad representation of Lebanese. It enjoys mass parliamentary and ministerial blocs. Bassil also reiterated, saying that Beirut condemns the attacks against Saudi missions in Iran and denounces any interference in the internal affairs of Arab countries. The Arab League on Friday declared Iran ally Hezbollah a terrorist group after Gulf monarchies adopted the same stance over the movement's support for the regime in Syria's war. Coming up next, U.S. Republican presidential frontrunner Donald Trump claims a man who was removed by Secret Service at a rally after he charged the stage is probably part of the Islamic State. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Syria's warring sides prepare for a new round of peace talks after locking horns over the fate of President Bashar al-Assad, with the regime insisting his ouster is a red line while the opposition is vowing to see him go. The UN-brokered indirect negotiations are due to begin in Geneva on Monday, the latest international push to find a solution to Syria's 5-year civil war, which has killed more than 270,000 people and forced millions from their homes. Government negotiators are expected in Geneva, where delegates from the main opposition group, the High Negotiations Committee, are already preparing. Analysts say much has changed since the last round collapsed last month, as fighting is raging across the country. But the huge government opposition divide will complicate a settlement. U.S. Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton is criticizing GOP frontrunner Donald Trump for ugly, divisive rhetoric that encouraged aggression and violence, she says. Her comments come a day after rowdy protests shut down the New York billionaires' rally in Chicago. More disruptions broke out at a rally in Cleveland, Ohio, but were quickly contained as Trump blamed them on Democratic candidates Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton.
Before we begin, I want to say a few words about what happened in Chicago last night. Now, we will always have our differences. That's what happens in a democracy. We dialogue, we debate, we discuss, we disagree. But the ugly, divisive rhetoric from Donald Trump and the encouragement of violence and aggression is not only wrong, but dangerous. If you play with matches, you can start a fire you can't control. That is not leadership, that is political arson. If you see bigotry, oppose it. If you see violence, condemn it. If you see a bully, stand up to him.
U.S. Republican presidential frontrunner Donald Trump claims a man who was removed by Secret Service agents at a rally in Ohio after he charged the stage probably had ties to the Islamic State. The incident happened as the New York billionaire spoke at a rally in Dayton International Airport. Trump briefly ducked at the podium, and 4 Secret Service agents scrambled to surround him after the man charged the stage. Take a look.
Unbelievable. All right, thank you. By the way, what do they do? Do they arrest these people? What happens? Do they arrest them? Or do they just put them outside? I hope they arrest these people because they're really violating all of us, okay? And I hope they're arrested. And all of a sudden, the people in the front row start screaming, "Be careful! Watch it! Watch it!" I'm speaking. I'm saying, what's this all about? I look back, and there's a guy charging the stage. And I mean charging. He put on a bull rush, charging the stage. And I have to tell you, folks, the Secret Service was unbelievable. But that's not the terrible part. The terrible part, I'm going to tell you, right? So they bring him into a court, and they process him, and the judge lets him go. Okay, all right. Now, let me tell you, if he would have gotten on stage, it would have been a problem, to be honest, because it would have been a problem, because he was looking to do harm. This wasn't a guy that was looking to, have a little fun. This was a guy that was looking to do harm. So the judge let him go. And then one of my people said, wow, they found his name. And it was probably ISIS or ISIS related. Do you believe it? And then they go online. My people found this. Then they go online and they find the guy is playing all sorts of very, let's say, music that you wouldn't be liking, dragging an American flag along the sidewalk, making all sorts of gestures, having all sorts of things on the internet.
This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our headlines. Protests erupt in Beirut as the Lebanese government approves a plan to solve an 8-month waste crisis that has raised concerns for public health. MP Talal Aslan states that the landfill plan to solve the waste management crisis will explode in the face of government, stressing that the opening of the Costa Brava landfill is not a solution. And Syria's warring sides prepare for a new round of peace talks after locking horns over the fate of President Bashar al-Assad. This wraps up our week here on Future Television. See you again tomorrow. Have a good one.
سعيد، أنا رجعت على لبنان، أتمنى إنك ترجع كمان على لبنان.
قرار صادر من مجلس الجامعة تسمية حزب الله الإرهابي.